I think that I've been quite struck today by this idea of the tension between structuralism and liberalism, which seems to have arisen in several of the topics we've discussed. And I think that there's quite a similar parallel in the work that we've done on inequality, in that the literature from the early years very much sought to find some sort of structural relationship between income inequality and development, whereas later work has seemed to reject the premise that there's this sort of deterministic relationship, and instead has focused much more on the role of policy and the fact that countries actually have a wide variety of experiences. And I thought it was very interesting today, the repeated references that were made to this idea that we may be reaching some sort of synthesis and some sort of practical, some sort of juncture at which we're looking more at practical solutions in terms of what comes next. And that's something that I see very much in the literature on inequality. Yes, I would say in the literature on equality, again, very much so, in that recent experience would suggest that in much, if not most of the world, that there's been a rise in inequality over the last 2 decades at least, and probably going further back. And there is quite a lot of recognition of this, but nonetheless there's been very little systematic policy in order to address inequalities. And I think that this is very true at the country level, and the point was made earlier today that there is also a lack of global cooperation around the idea that inequality is an important issue to tackle at the global level. I think that there is growing recognition that this idea of multidimensionality is important, and so far it's fed very much through to the discourse on poverty and, in fact, the way that poverty is being measured and the policies that are being applied to poverty. And I think that's starting to happen with inequality as well. And I think that one very interesting thing to come out of it is that when people start to look at inequality in dimensions other than income, it becomes much easier to justify different types of anti-inequality policy. And the reason is that there is a lot of debate around whether income inequality is legitimate or not, but you don't see quite the same sorts of debate when you look in other dimensions such as health or education. And so I think that it will be perhaps a big step forward to looking at policies that are more geared towards equalities of opportunity in some sense.